Hi, I'm Nikki, the obsessive bookseller, and welcome to the Sunday Shelfie. Today we are on week 3 of 9 of my young adult and middle grade collection. All of the books we'll be going over today are ones I've read before, so a lot of probably in-depth discussion of what I thought of each one. If you're new to this series, I'll link a full playlist in the description below. So let's go look at some books. Starting out with one of my favorite writers, whether it be young adult or adult spec fic, Richelle Mead. I love this author. Whatever you may think of this series because of the movie, maybe consider giving the books a chance. In my opinion, they are very much superior to what we got in the film, even though a lot of the basic plot points were the same. But the first several books, maybe 4 books, were just okay. I mean, they were a lot of fun to read. I love the characters. I love the love interest, actually. You don't hear me say that very often, but Richelle Mead is responsible for 2 of the maybe 5 love interests in any book I've ever read that I actually liked. And yeah, really love the one in here. This book really sent this author into the stratosphere for me. It was so good. What I love most about her is her ability to create this amazing momentum in the stories that she tells. So then you switch over to Bloodlines, which not only has my favorite female lead of any YA book that I've read, Sydney, because I relate to her more than almost any other, but the momentum in this series was incredible. So you get to this book and you feel like, oh my gosh, this feels so epic and I'm so invested in the story. So this made my very short list of all-time favorite books, which includes mostly adult science fiction fantasy. So that should tell you right there how much I love that. And then my best friend is rad. She got me a signed copy from, at the time, my favorite author. She's still pretty up there. Love it. So, and actually, even if you've read Vampire Academy and thought it was, pretty good, but nothing to write home about, give the Bloodlines series a try. It's amazing to me that I love this one so much, considering I don't like the love interest at all. But I still really enjoyed the story. And then we have the Glittering Court series. Okay, this one took kind of a colonial, girls in pretty dresses dropped in a colonial era, and I did not care for it. I thought the pacing was really off. I wasn't really on board for the conflicts. The first one was better than the second. I did not enjoy the second book very much, and so I never read the third one. And even at the time, I had read Ray Carson's Gold Seer trilogy and loved that one, so this was in the same vein, and yet it just didn't work for me. And actually, that's the only Richelle Mead series that I've read that I didn't care for. Everything else I loved. Here we have the Twilight series. Obviously, these were all purchased the day they came out. I love the series. I think it's impossible for me to go back and enjoy it again now because of all the things that I have become aware of. Very problematic love story. And I even recently tried to read The Midnight Sun and was very dissatisfied with the reason that Edward chose Bella. I was hoping to find more reasons on why he found her appealing, and instead it kind of came across as if the only reason he picked her is because she was a novelty and he was really bored with everything. So, not very romantic. But there is something about the way that these were written that is so absorbing. And even to this day, I can't really put my finger on exactly what it was. But from the very first page to the very end of the series, I was completely wrapped up in every single word and just so enmeshed that the real world disappeared for a while. Not a lot of books have done that to me. So if I ever figure out exactly how she was able to do that, then I will be all set in my own writing. It does help that these were kind of a novelty at the time. Not a lot had been written in the genre that was at least mainstream. So she does have an it factor, but it was also the type of story that had been written but had not been, like, mass distributed, if that makes sense. And then The Host, I don't think anybody liked The Host as much as the Twilight series, but I thought it was interesting. Really long book. Cool idea. I can't remember anything else about it other than it was a little otherworldly, and I liked that about it. I have an awesome box set that I haven't bothered to unwrap yet for the Cinder Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. I mentioned that I don't like fairy tale retellings because if I know anything about where the story is going to end up, I don't enjoy reading it. But these took a science fiction futuristic twist that was actually enough of a change to make me want to read them. And it was awesome. Like, Cinder's a cyborg. Like, that's pretty dang cool. Another thing I love about it is it had a really good sense of continuity throughout the whole thing. So events that happened in here directly affected here, and everything was kind of like a building momentum towards the finale. This third book, Cress, best of the series in my opinion. It was such a good book. Winter, the kind of petered out a little bit for me. I did not enjoy the last book as much as I thought I would. And I can't remember if I liked Fairest or not. I think I was expecting one thing and got another, so I was kind of dissatisfied with it, but don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've read it. But yeah, as a whole, this is one of the stronger young adult trilogies I've ever read. Trilogies. It's 4 books. Whatever. And I do think the covers are pretty striking. Prom Nights from Hell, it's a compilation of short stories. It's in my read collection. I think the only one I have actually picked up is the Stephenie Meyer book. But since have read Kim Harrison, so I should probably go in and read that one. Especially considering I've read the young adult trilogy that I think is probably referenced in here. But, I mean, you've got some pretty decent names here. Meg Cabot, I've heard of Lauren Miracle. Michelle Jaffe is the only one I don't know about. But, you know, once every, 10 years when I pick up a short story, that one probably won't be first on the list. The Inventor's Secret by Chad Morris. It's a signed copy. This is a really fun middle grade series. Kind of in the same vein as Fablehaven, but it's a school for inventors. And there's a lot of animals involved, and I just think this is so freaking cool. One of the better ones I've read. When I read this one, only the first one was out. I did eventually acquire the second 2 in the series, but just haven't made time to read them. But this is one of the ones I'm really excited to share with my kids. It's a lot of fun. Not talked about super often, even though I thought the quality was, stellar. Okay, I probably should talk about Fablehaven first before I talk about the Beyonders. I got the first book in the Fablehaven series with a t-shirt back when I was a bookseller. And luckily it was a time when I was pretty much the only one in this tiny bookshop reading young adult stuff and middle grade, so I got first dibs on it. It was awesome. Transition to the large Barnes & Noble where there are a ton of employees and we got to fight over everything. Oh, were the days when I had first pick on everything. The author I've met a couple times, and so all of my hardcovers are signed, which I think is pretty rad. But I love Fablehaven. It's not on quite the same epic scale as Harry Potter, but it made me feel the same way as Harry Potter did. But it's got its own really unique story. It's a preserve for magical creatures, and these kids are kind of swept up in that. It has a bunch of really fun obstacles to overcome. We'll get over to this shelf in a minute, but the Dragon Sanctuary novel is probably my favorite of the series, and it's one of those that was strong from start to finish. Not a single section in there was I bored with. I love it so much. Aside from Harry Potter, it's probably my favorite middle grade series on the market. I absolutely love that one. Can't recommend it highly enough. Now, the Beyonders left a little bit to be desired. I think an actual middle grade person would eat it up. It's got a cool sense of adventure, but it was more formulaic for me and it felt kind of a throwaway in a sense. Meet a cool monster, battle it or negotiate with it, move on. Meet another cool monster, battle it or negotiate with it, and move on. And it was just lather, rinse, repeat, at least until the halfway point where I got to before I finally put it down. And I tried to read it a couple different times. I don't know, I'm very, very much more forgiving on authors that I've read before who I really love. But I did not like that one. And as much as the Dragon Sanctuary element of it was my favorite part of the first series, I took a break after reading this third book because of that, lather, rinse, repeat thing. They spent a whole lot of time on the periphery of the action and describing the action instead of actually being immersed in the world. And so I had a lot of problems with execution on this. But I do like the idea, and I did buy the next 2 books in the series, so I will probably get around to reading that. And then the Five Kingdoms, this one I think my biggest problem was not a lot of connection to the conflict. And yet one monster after the other, there just wasn't enough to keep me absorbed, and so I never read on in the series. The Candy Shop War was pretty fun. Magic candy gives kids different abilities, and this one did what the other 2 series that I mentioned did not, and at least made me feel like a kid again while I was reading it. Quite enjoyed that one. And then I have not made it very far in this series, but I plan to. The Spirit Animals. This was one of those series initiated by Brandon Mull, and each subsequent one is written by a different middle grade or young adult author. And I've read the first 2 so far. I don't know why I don't have the second one over here. But anything to do with animals, I'm all over. I can't wait until my son is old enough to read this one with me. I kind of am saving it for him, in a way. I could probably breeze through them. But it gave me the sense of, those old Animorph books that I love so much. But with a more, classic fantasy adventure tale. And pretty well done, too. Red Dirt Jessie, I got this book at a book fair. I think we read it for one of those grade school book club things that they put you in, and I liked it enough to pick one up. I don't remember anything about it, other than I liked it, but it was it's about a dog. It was probably sad, but I don't remember. My grade school friend got me into this series, and I read these books several times. I thought they were a lot of fun. It's called The Boys Start the War and the Girls Get Even. Super fun, summer camp feel type of stuff. Good rivalry. Every kid could probably find a character in here that they relate to. Not every kid, but you know what I mean. Pretty generalized. But super fun middle grade stuff. Garth Nix, The Seventh Tower. This was one of those books I really wanted to read and enjoy, and this is 3 books in one. I made it through it, and even a week after I made it through it, I couldn't tell you a single thing about what the story was about. My eyes just kind of glazed over while I read it, and I have no idea why. Was it just, I do recall it was during my senior year when I was busy with so many different things, so maybe I just didn't have the concentration but wanted to go through the motions anyway. But this is one I'd like to revisit because if I remember nothing else, I do remember the atmosphere was pretty cool. I hate this particular cover, but this is what they sent out on the ARC. This is Delirium by Lauren Oliver. I've read this book twice. The second time I read it with the intention of actually continuing the trilogy, and then just never did. I feel like it stands really well on its own. And both times I didn't really have the patience for the perpetuated plot when I kind of figured I knew where it was going to end up anyway. But Lauren Oliver is a really lovely writer. That type of absorbing, really beautifully done, good concepts too. This was another arc I picked up by her, Panic. It's a standalone, if you can imagine that. It's essentially a rite of passage in this town where once you hit a certain age or are going to graduate high school, you have to do something dangerous. Something perhaps picked out by your peers, but I can't remember the exact details, but not my usual type of story. There's not magic or dystopian or anything in this. And yet, I really liked it. One of the better things I read that year, actually. Tamora Pierce, the set of 4 books that have to do with animals. I really love this one. I love this author's writing. She is actually quite high on my list to go back and read more from. I really want to read her Song of the Lioness Quartet, because that's kind of like the hailstone of her works, but awesome set, high quality. Can't wait to explore more from her. Then I got an arc of the book Wings by April Lynn Pike. It's a young adult romance that deals with fairies, kind of a portal fantasy. And I thought this was lovely. It was done really well. Very magical, very unlike anything I've read to date. And I thought the flowery covers were really pretty. So, yeah, fun little series there. And then Nixia. If you like sci-fi and competition and fun world building and really like the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown, this is an awesome young adult version of that. One of the strongest trilogies I've read in the last several years. I thought the second and third books held their own really well and kind of delivered on all the promises on the things that I was expecting from them. And true to form, I have the next two books here. I don't think this author's come out with anything else, or at least I haven't checked in a while, but I'm game to pick up anything because I liked these so much. Young adult sci-fi has a tendency to be really thin. So the world building isn't believable at all. They don't take hardly any time to develop anything. It's all about the characters and not about the world. I feel like for the limited page count he had writing for a young adult series, he incorporated a lot of cool stuff, and it's one that I'd actually even like to reread at some point. The Percy Jackson series. These are awesome. I personally love Fablehaven just a little bit more, but I've never been that super into mythology. And even as someone not really that into mythology, like, this is pretty freaking cool. I actually know more about it now because of this series than almost anything else I've come across. But the first 5 books, awesome. I'm not quite sure why those are there. Anyway, sorry about how dark it is over here. My young adult section is like just outside all of the natural light, and it's kind of a dark day. But anyway, note how nice and concise and thin these novels are compared to this continuation set of books. I didn't realize these were a direct continuation. And my ultimate biggest complaint is that there were so many unnecessary pages of text. If the story had been cut in half, say about this length, then I think I would have really liked them, but oh my gosh. And the middle books in this series, they were just drug out so long. The plot advancement was minuscule. And so it felt like in this series he was riding the high from this series and just kind of phoning it in to get them out. That being said, these are absolutely gorgeous hardcovers, like some of my favorite ones on my shelves, actually. Like thick and meaty, and I love the artwork. But I did not gain anything of substance out of this set here, and kind of wish I hadn't read it. It's pretty harsh, but yeah, did not like those at all. And even as a continuation, because y'all know I love the continuity and stuff. And was lucky enough to get an arc of Divergent, that futuristic, kids with special abilities and a sense of competition, fight for survival, high stakes. Really loved that one. I thought it was so cool. I even especially loved the second one. Note the absence of the third book. I thought it was such a waste of space. It did not deliver on any of the things that I thought it would, and I thought the author did some things simply for shock value, which didn't have any purpose or meaning for the whole series. It was almost like she was trying to mimic the Hunger Games in that regard. And first off, I did not like a lot of the last book of the Hunger Games. Second of all, at least some of the things in Mockingjay had meaning. Allegiant, just for me, did not work on any account. So I think I saw the first movie. I don't remember if there was more than one movie. There probably was, but I'm just not interested in seeing where it goes. But I love the first two. And then we don't really need to chat too much about this, but I've got my classic Harry Potters here. These were the originals that came out, and actually they are pretty well taken care of considering how many times I've read them. I think eventually I switched to my paperbacks so I could leave my hardcovers alone. You know a series is beloved when you've got more than one format. So there we have it, wrapping up this week's tour. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye.